Hi, folks, and welcome to the Meaningful Money Podcast. This is Season 15, Episode 8. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you put your finances in order. My name is Pete Matthew, and I'm going to share with you everything you need to know and everything you need to do to secure your financial future. I'm here to help you make sense of money. Here we go. Great to have you with me. We've covered a ton of ground in this season so far. We're only now approaching the halfway point, session 8 out of 16 in this season, which will take us all the way to Christmas. How scary is that? So we spent time looking at goals and actions and reviews. We've built a one-page financial plan. But as I've said a few times, the journey to financial independence is a long one. And just like, on a long drive, you come to a nice, open, clear bit of road. Feels good to put your foot down, right? And it feels good to accelerate your financial plans as well. Obviously, I'm not advocating speeding, no. But that's what we're going to be talking about this time, accelerating progress towards your goals. After the main body of the show, I'll look at a review that's been left, discuss what we're going to be talking about next time, announcement again about the meetup coming in early November, so stay tuned for that. Before all of that, though, remember this podcast is brought to you with the help of my friends at 7 Investment Management. They continue to sponsor the show. They've been helping me out here since 2011, which is a long time by any measure. So I really, really appreciate the support. Definitely could not have built this to what it is without them. So please do check out what they're up to. Say hi to them, say thank you to them, and check out what they do day to day. They are at 7im.co.uk. That's the number 7im.co.uk. And don't forget the Meaningful Money branded self-investment platform as well. All the information you need about that is at meaningfulmoney.tv/podcastinvest. Bit of a weird link, I know, but it means I know where you come from when you go there. meaningfulmoney.tv/podcastinvest. Go check it out. Right. Plodding our way to financial independence doesn't sound very appealing, does it? In the past few weeks, where we've run the numbers, done a bit of maths together to work out the timeline to our goals, for some of us, if we dared to admit it, that might have been a little bit depressing. But fear not, because there are ways that you can accelerate your progress so that the end goal moves closer a little bit more quickly, perhaps, than you might have hoped. That's what we're going to discuss today. So remember, notes, links, all at the show notes, meaningfulmoney.tv/pp8. That's for Planning with Purpose, episode 8. Planning with Purpose is the name of the season that we're in. meaningfulmoney.tv/pp8. Unlike last week, I'm going to try and trigger this sound effect in perfect timing like this. Okay, let's have a look at what you need to know. Firstly, you need to know that we're not going to talk about leverage today specifically. At least not this week. We're going to talk about it next week. Okay, it's a big enough subject, I think, to warrant its own show. That's next week. By leverage, I mean borrowing money primarily, borrowing money to invest in some way. Classic example of that, of course, is to borrow on a buy-to-let mortgage. You buy a property, you use the bank's money to buy the house, you get the rental income, you sell it one day, you get the profit, you pay the bank back. Assuming you service the debt along the way, it's a great system, right? So stay tuned for that next week. What a way to start this show with a teaser, for shame. So leverage comes next week. Just a reminder about what acceleration actually is. I have only a passing familiarity with the internal combustion engine, okay? But I'm pretty sure that when you depress the accelerator in your car, what's happening is more fuel and air is being pushed into the cylinders so that when you put your foot down, the engine really pushes you down the road more quickly, right? More fuel equals more speed. What I want to talk to you about today is really doing much the same thing to your financial engine. So what kind of fuel are we talking about in this case? Well, a few things. The first is free money, right? Essentially, this is a kind of leverage in that you're using other people's money to drive your pursuit of financial independence forward more quickly. But unlike traditional leverage, it usually doesn't need to be paid back, right? So we're talking tax relief and employer matches primarily. Now, you could argue, I hear some of you saying, well, tax relief, that's, you get given tax relief now, but you pay tax later on your pension. Yeah, that's true, but it's not a loan, right? And we can plan around that to a greater or lesser extent. But Free money, so important way of accelerating progress. Next, we got some basic financial disciplines, stuff that you can actually do, which can make a massive difference as time goes on. Increasing your savings rate is the key one, even by only small amounts, right? Regularly, though, can catapult things forward, as we'll see in a minute. And then finally, we have risk. There is no disputing the link between risk and reward. A higher equity content portfolio will make you more money over time. That's been pretty comprehensively proven, I think. But it will also be much more volatile than a multi-asset portfolio, say. So you pay your money and you take your choice. I want to look at how portfolio construction can make a difference to your timeline. Whether you should consider it or not is up to you. But really, I think that's it for what we need to know, right? We're just talking about accelerating, adding more fuel into your financial engine. So let's crack on with what you need to do. That's why we're here after all, right? Okay. What do you need to do? Firstly, you need to make use of regular increments. I've talked about this before, but just want to dwell on it a little bit. This is easily the easiest thing. That's a lot of easies. It's definitely the easiest thing you can do to accelerate your progress. By committing to regularly increasing your savings rate. It can be astonishing, actually, what a difference this can make. So let's just put some numbers on it. It's only an example, right? So let's say you are saving £250 a month. Doesn't matter for now about whether you're putting that into a pension or an ISA or what. Just doesn't matter. So assuming your savings grow by 7% a year, after 30 years, you'll have just over 300,000, right? Not too shabby, decent amount of money. Now, let's say you increase your 250 quid a month by £25 per month each year. So in year 2, you're saving £275 a month. Year 3, you're saving 300 quid a month and so on, right? If you do that, you'll shave off about 6.5 years of time to get to your 300 grand, right? 25 quid a month, that's probably doable, right? I imagine if you were sitting down a year from now and say, actually, can I save another 25 quid a month? Probably, if you're in the life stage where, you know, that this season of the podcast is applicable to you, where you're on a roll of saving and investing, probably 25 quid a month is going to be doable for you. Only you know that. It'll hurt most in the early years, particularly if you're doing flat increases, you know, pounds and pence increases, because a 25 quid a month increase, the first time you do it, that's going to hurt the most because your income will never be as low, hopefully, as it is now, right? Hopefully you're only going to get increasing pay as time goes on. But over time, if you stick with pounds and pence increases, they will become increasingly irrelevant. You will feel them less and less. You increase by 50 quid a month per year, right? You'll hit 300 grand in just over 19 years. You're taking off more than a third off the time horizon, the very definition of acceleration. Instead of it taking 30 years, it's taking 19 and a bit. What about instead of increasing by a pounds amount, you increase by a percentage? Well, if you increase your monthly savings by 10% each year, it has roughly the same effect in this case of a £50 a month increase, right? Give or take a few months, you're taking off a third of your timeline. Maybe rather than increasing by 50 quid a month once a year, say, you say, right, I'm going to actually increase my savings rate by £20 a month every 3 months. So once a quarter, you increase your savings rate. More regular, but smaller increments each time. Well, if you do that, in this case, it'll take you just over 21 years to hit 300 grand. Now, this is just an example, okay? That's not to say that will always work. You know, so it depends on the numbers, depends on your assumed growth rate. I assumed 7% a year in that case, which is punchy but doable. It depends on the frequency of the increases, depends on how much you increase by, loads of variables, but it's fairly simple maths. Hopefully we can agree that regular increments won't hurt as much as less regular ones, because if they're less regular, generally they will need to be bigger, right? They won't hurt so much as they happen, but they will make a big difference over time. Hopefully we can agree that. So how do you do this? Well, we talked about last week having a regular review, right? And this is definitely something to add into the review mix. And I talked about that last week. Do you need to change your savings rate as a result of your progress toward your goal? Just do it anyway, to be honest. If you can, just make it a regular discipline. But ask yourself once a year, what can I do to accelerate my progress? Then, if at review you decide you're going to increase your savings rate by 50 quid a month, the first place you should look is your pension, right? If you're employed, you should be able to ask your employer to take an extra 50 quid a month off your pay. You'll pay less tax, so you probably won't see a reduction of £50 in your take-home pay. It should be a bit less of a reduction than that. All depends on the mechanisms involved. If you're paying into your own pension, then it's even easier, of course. It's just a case of changing the direct debit. Don't be tempted to increase by 50 quid a month, including the tax relief. More on that in a minute. Say, what can I put in extra to what I'm putting in now? If that's 50 quid a month, then put it in. And then the tax relief will be gravy on top of that. Automate this where you can, but it's not always easy. Most pension providers, most platforms, they can't easily comply with regular increases. You have to go in and tell them, but it takes seconds. I did it this morning, actually, before recording this show. Just logged into my platform and increased the monthly savings rate. Right? Why did I do that? Because I've just taken my daughter off my car insurance and saved about 50 quid a month. So she's 20 and a new driver, so it's quite expensive. But, rather than that 50 quid a month that I'm now saving just being absorbed, it's an immediate pension savings increase, right? Those are the sort of thought process and habits we need to get into. What if you get a bonus or some other kind of ad hoc lump sum payment, small inheritance or something like that? Well, commit to saving a chunk of it, and a chunk at least equal to the percentage of your normal basic pay that you would put in. So let's say you're paid 2,000 quid a month and you're saving 200 quid a month into your pension. That's 10%. So try to save at least 10% of any windfalls. But ideally, go way further than that. If this is extra money that you haven't really budgeted for and you don't need it to live day to day, then put a chunk of it aside, right? Enjoy some of it in the moment, definitely. But commit to putting a chunk away for your future financial wealth, and you won't regret it. Your future self certainly won't regret it. It can be really easy to back off, all right? Take your foot off the gas, and there might be seasons of your life where that's necessary. Maybe your income is reduced for a season because you take mat leave or something like that. But pursuit of your financial goals is pretty relentless, so don't be tempted to relax. Remember the laser focus. Remember, any increment you make to your savings is most painful in the first month that you do it, right? Because you'll miss the money that month. But the second month, you'll miss it a bit less. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months in, you won't miss that money at all, right? So it's always most painful straight away after you do it, okay? So commit to these regular increments. It makes a huge difference to your pursuit of your goals and the timelines. Second, you need to take every single bit of free money that's going, right? Common sense, really. If I knocked on your door right now and offered you a £50 note with no strings attached, you would take it, right? At least once you got over your suspicion of some random norther knocking on your door and offering you money. The personal finance system is set up so that we can benefit from free money in quite a few ways. So we need to feel no hesitation whatsoever about taking those opportunities where we can. So the first of these, of course, is tax relief, a recurring theme here. Any personal finance podcast that didn't talk about pensions tax relief would be somewhat negligent. So, we talk about tax relief primarily in pensions. You know how this works, I'm sure. Whatever you personally put in gets 20% relief automatically. So if you put 80 quid into your pension, the pension company will claim another 20 quid back from HMRC, making it £100 in total. If you're a high rate taxpayer, you get an additional 20% off, right? So in that example, you get an extra 20 quid off your tax bill, right? When you do your tax return. So it's only cost you 60 quid, actually, to get £100 into your pension pot. It's amazing, really. We do need to talk about 2 other mechanisms by which you can attract tax relief. I'll go into a little bit more detail on these in a couple of weeks. We're talking about next level diversification in a couple of weeks. But I need to introduce you to enterprise investment schemes and venture capital trusts, EISs and VCTs. Both of these are mechanisms designed to attract investment into smaller, growing firms by offering tax breaks to you, the investor. Let's be clear right from the start, though. Smaller, growing companies are far more likely to fail than larger, more well-established companies. So if you invest, buy shares in a company that fails, you could lose everything. You probably would lose everything. So let's be sure that we're comfortable with that eventuality before getting too excited about tax breaks, all right? But both EISs and VCTs offer 30% tax relief. Now, you will have to have paid enough tax to justify the relief. So you can't get more relief than you have paid in tax. So if you've paid, I don't know, 10,000 quid in tax over the year from your employment, say, and you inherit a chunk of money and you decide you're going to invest 100 grand into an EIS, right? You're not going to get 30 grand in tax relief because you haven't paid 10 grand in income tax, right? So you'll only get the 10 grand back. So watch out for that, okay? With EISs, you have to hold the investment for 3 years to retain that tax relief. With VCTs, it's 5 years. So you get the tax relief through your tax return, but you'd have to pay it back if you cancelled your investment within those timeframes. With the EISs, you get some capital gains tax benefits as well, so they're worth considering. If you've made gains elsewhere, you can roll them into an EIS. You can even get loss relief, so if you lose money on an EIS, you can offset your income tax with that loss. One little known advantage with a venture capital trust, when it matures after 5 years, you can roll over the proceeds and get tax relief again. Well, you've already had tax relief on that money and tax-free growth, but you can roll it over into another VCT and get tax relief again. I don't know anywhere else where that happens. It's worth having for the right people as long as you understand the risks. So more on these in a couple of weeks. Let's move on to salary sacrifice, an important thing. This is a mechanism whereby you can, as the name suggests, sacrifice some of your salary in return for a higher pension contribution. All right? So rather than being paid the money out into your pay packet and into your bank account, the money essentially gets redirected into your pension. Benefit is that the employer saves national insurance contributions, right? And many employers will offer to pay that saving into your pension as well, right? So that's pretty useful. Ask your pension or your human resources or whoever's responsible for managing payroll and pensions in your firm what the deal is. Is salary sacrifice an option? But this can be fairly significant, actually. Employers' national insurance is 13.8% on salary above a certain level. So if you sacrifice, for easy figures, 10 grand and your boss is happy to pay in the national insurance savings as well, potentially that's an extra 1,380 quid going into your pension. Not too bad, really. Doesn't cost you any more, doesn't cost the company any more. They were paying that anyway, but instead of paying it to the revenue, they're paying it into your pension. Right? Pretty valuable. Oftentimes you have to commit to salary sacrifice for a minimum of a year, so make sure that you don't leave yourself short in income terms by doing that, because you might have to commit for a year. So make sure you've got enough spendable money in the meantime. And let's not forget the good old employer match, right? These days your employer has to put in a minimum of 3% of your pension, of your salary into your pension. Many will add in more if you do the same. So it makes the best sense, I believe, for you to contribute as much as you can to get the maximum match from your employer that you can. So if they say, yeah, we will match up to 7%, you pay in 7%, we'll pay in 7%. Just do it, all right? Try to put away the 7% yourself if you can. Otherwise, we're leaving money on the table, right? Emphasis on the if you can. I understand this is easy in the abstract and often not so easy in practice, but if you can, get an extra chunk out of your boss because you put more into your pension, then do it if you can. So take as much free money as you can. Tax relief, salary sacrifice, employer match. These are great ways of accelerating your progress towards your goal. Now, I want to talk about harnessing risk to do the same thing, to accelerate progress. Now, I'm on potentially sticky ground here because suggesting that it might make sense to take more risk to achieve your goals, if I did that as an advisor, I think I'd be in trouble. See, my regulator wants to know that I have assessed a client's attitude to risk. That's not an easy task in itself, actually. And then I've recommended solutions which are in accordance with that recorded attitude to risk. So if I was to suggest to a client, well, actually, you could take a whole boatload more risk and possibly achieve your goals a little bit sooner, probably I'd be censured by the regulator for that. Risk is something we need to get to know really well and understand as an investor and a wealth builder, because with familiarity comes understanding, and with understanding comes an acceptance of the true nature of risk. So we're going to talk a bit more about behavior in episodes 11 and 12 in a few weeks. Got my friend Neil Bage coming back on, one of the country's leading lights in behavioral finance. But for the novice investor, I would argue that the biggest risk of all is the risk that they will make bad decisions at the wrong time. More experienced wealth builders should have a better understanding not only of how investments work in good times and bad, but also a better understanding of themselves. So, if you take a risk questionnaire and you come out with, say, a balanced attitude to risk, well, that would normally suggest an equity holding of no more than, say, 60% or so of the total of your portfolio. Now, I've talked about risk flex before, where depending on your time scale, you might want to push the risk up a notch or two for longer time scales. But actually, for very long time scales, there's an argument for really going all out with your investing. Remember, no one loses money on the stock market if they A, spread their money around, and B, don't sell when their shares are worth less than they bought them for. It's the only way to lose money on the stock market. So with that in mind, if you can cope with a potentially very rocky ride, then it makes sense to invest 100% in equities, right? And by rocky ride, I mean potential for the value of your investments to halve, right? That's a big deal. If you're not comfortable with that, then yes, dilute your shares with other assets. That's what I normally talk about doing. The thing about harnessing risk is that you're depending on something completely unknowable and unmanageable to help you build your wealth. And that might just be too uncomfortable for you to go all in on. But it's worth considering, I think. Be careful, but it's worth considering. Remember that if your goal is a cash event, that is, you want to spend an amount of money at a given point in the future, buying the camper van, big holiday, daughter's weddings, whatever. If that's the case, you're going to need to convert assets into cash you can spend at some point. And you're going to need to do that as you approach the target date, because the last thing you need is to find that your money has reduced in value because of a market event right before you're going to need it. That would be disastrous. You know this, I know. Long term, take the risk. Short term, don't do it, no matter how tempting it might be. Keep your risk managed, but be prepared to harness risk to accelerate progress, right? Worth considering. So, regular increments, free money in the form of tax relief, salary sacrifice, employer match, and then finally considering maybe taking more risk than you might be immediately comfortable with, all in the intention of pressing on towards our goal. You'd be amazed, actually, the difference that these things can make. Certainly the combination of them can make a massive difference. You might think this is all really obvious stuff, and it is, right? There is no secret to building wealth. Yet so few people intentionally take advantage of these things, and only a fraction of people will consider VCTs and EISs because of the risks involved. So let's be clear. The best thing you can do is to regularly increment your savings rate and to get as much tax relief and employer match as you can. All right, this you can do in just pensions and ISAs, the simple accounts that most of us use and all of us can understand. For those who are really looking to drive things forward, who have the risk tolerance to do it and the understanding to do it, then yes, more esoteric investments might be a good option. Don't be too quick to discount something because it sounds a bit weird, right? Just as there was a time when you didn't fully understand a pension, you didn't fully understand an ISA or how to invest in either of those. If you think, I don't really understand venture capital trusts, I'm going to stay clear of those, just do the research and get to know them, all right? Continue listening. We're going to talk a little bit more about those in a couple of weeks. So, hope that was useful. Some food for thought, I'm sure. Let me know what you think in the comments, beingformoney.tv/pp8. Right, this is from Rolling Stone 1964. Pete, I came to your podcast only very recently, having spent 6 months grappling with endless calculations and driving my family mad with the dilemma of whether to transfer out of a final salary pension when offered an apparently very generous sum at age 55. The scheme had closed to future accrual in 2016, and I had a deadline of whether to take an enhanced pension or to transfer. Listening to just one key episode, the revised one you did on transfers, brought me back from the brink, clarified how I felt deep down about the security of the pension versus the responsibility of managing the cash myself, and enabled me to make the right decision. Unlike many other financial commentaries, your podcasts relate the money to its ultimate ends and the particular needs of each of us using it, and we're all different. Rolling Stone 1964, I'm glad, alive, I'm glad that it was useful to you. Very specific that. I can't remember when that episode was, but I'm really glad that you had, that you made that decision. I don't know your circumstances, of course. There are occasional circumstances where it may make sense to pull out of a defined benefit scheme, but for most of us, that's not the case. So I'm really glad that it was helpful to you, Rolling Stone, in coming to that decision. So thank you for leaving the review, mate, as well. I really appreciate that. If you want to do the same, meaningfulmoney.tv/iTunes or wherever you're listening to this show. If you can leave a review, please do so. It really helps. Okay, just a heads up, if you happen to be in London or if you want to be in London, on Friday the 8th of November, I'm going to be hanging out in a pub in the city called the Cross Keys. Cross with an E on the end. Crossy. The Crossy Keys. About 7 p.m, Friday the 8th of November. Me and Damien Fay and Andy and the gang from Money to the Masses. Hanging out in a pub, talking about whatever takes our fancy, right? Not a formal event at all. It is literally hanging out in a pub with some mates. And I think we had something like 60 or 70 people through last year, and it was amazing. Thank you, by the way, for everybody that came out in Birmingham as well towards the end of September. It was great to see you guys there. You know who you are, particularly Richard, Anya, and Phil that we went to dinner with. It was great to spend time with you, but everybody that turned up had a blast chatting with you, so thank you for that. Friday the 8th of November, 7 p.m, the Cross Keys in the City of London. That's where we're going to be next, and we're going to call it the second annual Drinks in the City with Personal Finance Podcasters. What a catchy title. Okay, next time we're going to be talking about using leverage. Controversial subject, potentially, but I'll be breaking it down, as usual, simplifying it, trying to cut out the stuff you don't need to know or be worried about. But leverage next time, an important subject. And, folks, that is it for another episode of the Meaningful Money Podcast. Now, halfway through this season. So any comments, questions, leave them at the show notes, meaningfulmoney.tv/pp8. I'll do my best to answer. Okay, don't forget the Facebook group as well, meaningfulmoney.tv/community. 2,500 and more people in there asking great questions. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next week. Cheers.